Um, Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Welcome to the Sunday mornings at the Marxist Library. A reminder before we start that we are recording our presentations and the discussions that follow and post these for our wider audience. The videos will be available both at our YouTube channel, ICSS Marxist, and our website, icssmarx.org, in the next couple of days. As the ICSS group, which stands for the Institute for the Critical Study of Society, we are a group of volunteers who organize the meetings and a larger group of participants who meet every Sunday to discuss world matters. My name is Mehmet Bayram, and I will be hosting this session on Sunday, June 16, 2024. I'm a member of the program committee that organizes the Sunday mornings at the Marxist Library, and I'd like to start off by reminding everybody that we always welcome your input, feedback, and suggestions for topics and speakers. You can contact us through our website at icssmarx.org. This meeting is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. The opinions expressed here are those of the participants, and they do not necessarily represent those of ICSS or the Marxist Library. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our motto is taken from Karl Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach, quote, "The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it." This year will prepare the stage for a large number of elections in the world. More than 50 countries are set to have elections, which will show or hide the trends that cover the world. The elections, however, mostly turn into machination, manipulation, and trickery in most of these countries, instead of an open manifestation of the people's demands. The ruling powers, the capitalist oligarchies, do not give up the state power they enjoy just because people demand change. But the governments may change and leaders may come and go while the system of exploitation continues. Today, we will talk about a very important election that took place in India. Even with many manipulations and trickeries, the leading party BJP and its leader Modi suffered a setback. How this happened, the events that led to this result, and the meaning for India and for the world will be presented by Raj Sahai, a member of our ICSS program committee and a dear friend of mine. Raj is our resident Marxist scholar who is an immigrant from India and came to the US in 1966. He has been involved in peace and justice movements since 1968 and is leading the study of Marxism in many reading gatherings. He will now decipher this unexpected turn of results in India. It's all over to you, Raj.
Thank you, Mehmet, for a very generous introduction. So the heading of my talk is Modi's Hindutva Chariot Stopped. Is it a temporary reprieve for Muslims and democracy in India? That's a question mark. So we'll try to tackle that question. I've pasted 8 bullet points on which I'll be speaking. I pasted them in the chat so you can take a look at it. So I'll go with the first point, which is what happened in India's 2024 parliamentary election. Well, here the BJP suffered a major setback in the recent, May-June, actually April-May election. Instead of getting 370 seats in the 543-seat parliament, a goal Modi set himself, which would have given the BJP 2/3 of the seats in the parliament and thus enabled BJP to change India's secular constitution. So they instead lost seats. Instead of gaining seats from their 303, which they had in the last parliament, and they had 282 in the previous first time Modi became prime minister. So they were increasing 282 to 303, and they expected to go higher, but instead they lost 63 seats. And now they are in a minority. They have the largest number of seats, but they have formed a government which is yet to be tested in the parliament by a vote of confidence. But they have two major allies. So their alliance is called National Democratic Alliance, NDA. But these two major components of their alliance, which is TDP of Andhra Pradesh, a southern state, and JDU, which is from Bihar, eastern part of India, both are opposed to BJP's Hindutva ideology. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing holds together. It might, because opposition is still weak, but it's not as weak as it was before. So even more significant, this defeat or setback to the Hindutva ideology in BJP is the unequal playing field that Modi administration in the last two 5-year terms created for the opposition. I'll list them what they did. The first, the mass media in India is just like here, completely a corporate media, large corporation-owned media, plus the Indian government gives them advertisement, and so they don't want to lose that money. So the government, so they're very pro-Modi. In any case, ideologically, they're well-paid people, just like here, MSNBC, for example, is and CNN. So anyway, they backed Modi fully and acted as it's almost practically as a propaganda mouthpiece. The second is India's monopoly capitalists hugely funded the BJP. They gave it to others as well, but not much. Third, Modi's government threatened opposition leaders in these two terms using the income tax department and a financial investigation agency in India called Enforcement Directorate, which has the power to investigate any person's personal wealth source. So they have extraordinary power. They can detain you, they can question you, and they can put you in jail. They can do all that. So that kind of pressure was used to break opposition leaders and bring them into BJP. Now this is kind of polluted the BJP pool because they bring a different ideology there. But Modi is determined to keep the opposition weak. So that's all this happened. Another reason was during the election, Modi government froze the account of its major opposition Congress party during the election to stymie its campaign. And how it did it is a different matter. We can go in the question answer, but it was successful and it presented difficulties. Fifth, it appointed 2 out of the 3 election commissioners. India has an election commission, and all throughout these last 30, 40 years, it has a great reputation of being pretty giving even playing field to all parties. But this time, Modi muscled his way there, appointed 2 out of 3 election commissioner, and so therefore his chairman was effectively an appointed person of Modi. And he tilted the whole process in BJP's favor considerably. So given all that, they still lost seats. So it is very significant. So why did it happen? The answer in brief are 2 factors. One is material reality asserted itself, and the Indian civilization's live and let live philosophy. That's an old Indian philosophy. Probably that's how such varied people who came from all over the world to settle down in India could survive. And that also came into play against Hindutva, which is intolerant philosophy. But in the factors, I would say unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, very high, was a factor. Inflation was a factor. Basic food prices have doubled in 10 years. These are the very basic that everybody needs. While income rise of the lower 3/4 of the population have not kept pace with it. So, and the third factor was the reduction, changes in soldier service. Now, most of the soldiers in India come from peasant stock from a few states, and not from all the states. I mean, they do come from many states, but they are their benefits. They put them on a 4-year term, just like United States, and only a quarter of them would be renewed to get further service. So they were unhappy, and they will not get much benefit. Right now, the peasants join as soldiers. I'm not talking officers. The fourth item was right now they get 10-year term, and it extends beyond that normally. Farmers' movement was also a factor because Modi had tried to end the minimum support price, which the farmers affected, particularly the farmers of Punjab and Haryana, but throughout the country. But these farmers fought back, and a lot of farmers died. As you recall, we had a couple of programs here about that movement. And Modi was forced to take back the 3 laws. That actually was going to pave the way for takeover of agriculture by the monopoly capital of India. Fifth reason was a threat to India's constitution. And this is a very serious thing, and I think it's by far probably the greatest factor. So India consists of, as you know, castes. And I think every country in the United States also has caste, although it's not recognized as such. But in India, the government formally delineates caste. So there are basic 4 divisions, and then there's one outside. So this is 3 upper castes, which is Brahmin, the Kshatriya, Vaishya, which are traders and such. And the 4th one is basically Dalits, Shudras, which do all services, which are basically includes growing of food. And then comes Dalits, who do the worst of these menial work, I mean, this category. So India has basically 5 different, if you want, divisions in this. And this is an old division that comes from 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago and older, okay? And so the lower caste, which is 3/4 of the population of Hindus, I'm talking about 80% or so, they saw a threat when Modi set the goal, and some of his party members openly said, once we get 2/3 majority, by the way, that it will be 269 seats. Modi wanted 369. Modi had set the goal of 370. And some of his leaders in his party said, well, we're going to change the constitution. Well, this threat of getting the benefits they get as affirmative action benefits, that will be taken away, and they turned against the government, okay, against this party. So another related issue is that the upper caste candidates were higher percentage in BJP than in opposition, okay? They had 31% and opposition and 19%. Of course, it was not well known, but what happened was that Modi even claims, right? He says that I'm a OBC, other backward caste. So he probably is from that caste, but that caste has a lot of gradation. So like symbolically, he said, well, you know, I am with you. And they do carry, I mean, they had candidates, but 31% were the upper caste, whereas opposition had only 19%. The upper caste, from which I also come, is about 17% of the Hindu population. So that was a factor. And the other factor was strategy. Socialist Party in my home state, which is the largest state, Uttar Pradesh or UP, with 238 million people. And so it sends 80 members to parliament of 543, very significant. It's the largest, almost double of any other state, largest states. Congress Party and the Socialist Party aligned, and they fielded candidates not competing with each other. And this time the Socialist Party and Congress included many lower castes, which were, so basically depending on the constituency, they picked the best candidate that represented, that had a lot of support among the caste there, okay? So that was a very significant change, and it had an impact. And then there was the Congress Party manifesto, which Rahul Gandhi is given credit for, and I think he deserves it, who has recently emerged as the Congress Party's most influential leader. It was his influence that a Dalit leader, long-time Dalit leader in Congress Party, became General Secretary of the party, and they together helped draft a manifesto. This is an election manifesto that promised a radical economic plan, sort of like Roosevelt's New Deal, okay? So these are the factors that together defeated decisively the BJP in the largest state. And BJP also lost in the next three largest states, which is Maharashtra, Bengal, and then in the south, Tamil Nadu, where they always lose, but they have not even a single seat. They lost in West Bengal, and they lost in Maharashtra. So it's a very significant defeat. Another factor is Modi's obsession with power. The Prime Minister's office in India under Modi controls all the departments of government. His ministers have little power. And he even tried to get the BJP publicly distance itself from the RSS. RSS, I will get into what RSS is a little later, which is its ideological leader. And so, and fountainhead, of its ideology. Anyway, so that brings me to the second bullet points that I have pasted in the chat, the right wing versus the democratic revolution in India. Okay. So the right wing of India consists of RSS, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which is National Self-Help Volunteer Organization. And it is not supposed to be running candidates. They don't run candidates in politics. And the BJP and there are various other affiliated organizations are associated with this RSS. BJP, you may say, is the political party of RSS, okay? So the RSS ideology is Hindutva, okay, right from the beginning, founded in 1925. It believes in caste hierarchy and patriarchy, okay? Now, the most liberal interpretation of Hindutva is that the Hindu civilization is the crucible of Indian nationhood. Other religions are foreign to it. They came from outside of India and may be practiced by their followers in India, but Hindu ethos should be respected and held higher than all other religions. Now, this is opposed to India's secular constitution, which provides complete equality to all religions, okay? And along with that, legitimacy to complete the democratic revolution in India, which started with the anti-colonial struggle, okay? The anti-colonial struggle, when they waged against the British, they realized that unless they brought lower caste into the movement, the upper caste, they're not going to succeed in pushing the British out. That's when they began to include them in the national movement and their program, they had a very significant leader, the Dalits. He was a Dalit, actually, the least lowest rung of this caste system, or rather outside of it. It is so low that it's even outside of it. So his name was Bhimrao Ambedkar. Okay, so Ambedkar was against to Gandhi. Okay, Gandhi sort of believed in liberal caste interpretation. He was not for the abolition of caste. Probably practically Gandhi didn't think it was possible. Bhimrao Ambedkar wanted to destroy casteism in India, anyway, interestingly, he came to Columbia and got a PhD in sociology, and then went to England and got a PhD in economics from London School of Economics. And all of his education was funded by an upper caste king of Western India. So this is a very interesting story by itself. Anyway, Nehru and Gandhi, the two founders of modern India, actually picked him, despite the differences, to be the chairman of the Constitutional Convention. And in this constitution, they gave preferences, affirmative action to uplift the lower caste. Okay. How it is done, I'll get into it a little later. So if you change the constitution, you're taking India backward. Okay. And these castes knew that. And although they hide it, this whole thing is hidden. Politics never practiced openly because election politics is never open. People don't tell what their real motivations are. The leaders don't say. So 80% of Indian population either oppressed castes or are Muslim. Okay, the right-wing political tactics, of course, hide their agenda. So added to that now, which is new, is the Modi has a dictatorial mindset, which suits, in my opinion, the monopoly capital that is rising. Okay, I mean, you can see that here, the liberal democracy is slowly dying in the United States also. So there is actually a contradiction between RSS ideology and Modi, because Modi not so much cares about caste and other idealism of RSS. He cares about it, but his highest agenda is promotion of monopoly capital. That's the Indian monopoly capital, okay? So let's talk a little bit about democratic revolution. What is this democratic term, something called? I'm picking this term because it was used in the Russian Revolution, okay? Russian Revolution, it meant overthrow of feudalism, right? February Revolution of 1917 was termed the Democratic Revolution, and then October Revolution was the start of I consider the start of the Socialist Revolution, which was completed by 1938. But what many people think, a democratic revolution was just finished with the overthrow of feudalism. It's not true, even in Russia. It was also a long drawn process in which Stalin, when he brought all the oppressed nationalities into the mainstream, got them educated, and gave them power collectively, in fact, higher than the big Russian province. Okay, Russia as one of the provinces. Okay, in India, so similarly, it's a long process, and there is a fight going on. So you may call it either it's a revolution or a struggle, but I call it a revolution. Okay, so this democratic revolution is now enshrined in the Indian Constitution. Now that gives reservations, unlike here, it is only a goal, but in the United States, in India, you actually have reservations for the backward castes in colleges and in government jobs. Okay, there's no reservation in the private sector. Okay, they're not required. And so anyway, so by collecting all these under the nationalist banner, anti-colonial banner, the British, it helped push the British out. in 1947. All right. Now, the fact is that although some of the lower castes have moved up substantially in the past 7 decades of India, the upper caste men still run most everything in India, even today. So there's some have come up and they are part of this system, but vast majority is still upper caste. Banks, banking, governments, local, state, and central, most medium to large businesses, mass media, colleges and universities. And of course, in all corporations, that's the same thing, as I mentioned, large businesses. But many in the upper caste now also are poor as capitalism advanced in India with limited job growth. So there is a growing social tension across India, further sharpened in the last 10 years of Modi governance. With the aggressive neoliberal policy of Modi, private capital does not have to practice the reservation policy. So that accentuates the situation. So I come to my third point, which is the global context of the rise of right wing in India. From the historic defeat of socialism in 1989-91, when the USSR was dissolved and China took the path of capitalism run by the Chinese Communist Party of China, and I know some of my friends will object, but it is capitalism that is run there. And the US emerged as the unipolar monopoly capitalist power. This whole change impacted India as well as the rest of the world was impacted. In India, the ruling Congress Party opened India to foreign capital in 1991, just 2 years after China did. Communist Party's influence weakened in India as it did elsewhere in the world, except where it held power, like in China. Another impact on Indian politics and rise of Hindutva ideology specifically is the rise of political Islam. Okay. Its Sunni variety, not its Shia variety. The Sunni variety used by the US to fight against the USSR in Afghanistan, whose laboratory was Pakistan, by the way. And later it metastasized into Al-Qaeda terrorism of Osama bin Laden against the USA, which actually CIA had helped train him, and Ayman al-Zawahiri of Egypt. Pakistan, as I said, was the base for this, and Pakistani state then started using terrorism to fight India's control of Kashmir at first, later on in general, against India as a tactic because India is too powerful for Pakistan now. So they use this low intensity warfare strategy using these jihadis. These two developments gave legitimacy to the right wing, and that gave a push to the right wing Hindu nationalism. So the two are related, and to the Hindutva ideology. Mehmet, how much time do I have left? Okay.
You still have time. It's you still have about 25 minutes.
Thank you. So I come to the fourth point. How did the BJP build itself as a powerful political party? BJP's political rise started with a campaign to demolish the Babri Masjid, a mosque. Masjid is mosque. Masjid is a Urdu word in India for mosque. Starting in 1984, they started a campaign. So they used a Toyota truck decorated with boards around, kind of shabby, to look like a chariot, a very shabby chariot, of the ancient Hindu deity Ram. Ram, who the epic Sanskrit poem Ramayana says was an avatar, that is a god in human form. Babri Masjid was built in 1529 in honor of Babur, a Turkic Genghis Khan descendant adventurer from Uzbekistan, who invaded India and founded the Mughal dynasty in 1527. But this mosque was believed to be built in this birthplace of Ram, the Ram that I described. As such, it was a perfect symbol for Hindu nationalists to target. This campaign brought a devotee mob consisting of young and poor Hindu men from many parts of India, organized by the BJP, who socialists in power in the province stopped, but at that time, but eventually BJP succeeded in demolishing it in 1992 when the government in my home state, that, by the way, that is in my home state also, was I think BJP's government. So BJP began its rise in election politics from this event. And they built a new expensive huge Ram temple at the same site where the mosque was demolished. And Modi went there to inaugurate it in February this year. Modi's own rise within the BJP is from the 2002 Godhra railway incident and the communal clashes that followed that took lives of at least 2,000 people, 75% of them being Muslims. So from there, his rise within the BJP rises with one demolition here and violence that surrounded it. After demolition of the masjid, there was violence all over India. You know, lots of people died there. I think 3,000 people died. Again, more Muslims died than Hindus. So these two, this is the birthplace of basically the form of Hindutva that is being practiced, particularly by Modi. But its beginning goes to 84 and the liberal leaders before him, which was Bajpayee. Anyway, the Congress, so-called liberal leader, you know, he presented a liberal front, so to speak. The Congress Party was founded. Now I'll go a little bit about Congress Party. It was founded in 1885. It led the anti-colonial movement in India under M.K. Gandhi, also known as Mahatma Gandhi. And his strategy was non-violent mass movement. And it governed this Congress Party India from 1947 to 1980s. It was a mass-based party, but by 1970s, increasingly run by one family, the Nehru clan, starting with Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi. And by the way, the Gandhi name is not because it had anything to do with Mohandas Gandhi, the Mahatma Gandhi, but that she had married a Muslim man who had adopted the name Gandhi, and actually he became, I think, an atheist. And so she married him. She never divorced him. So her last name became Gandhi. When she was young, she married him. But then she lived with her father, and I don't know what happened to him. He died. You know, he was in the opposition, I think. So she became pretty authoritarian after 1971 war that broke up Pakistan and gave birth to Bangladesh. She promoted her sons. The first son died in a plane crash, and then the second son, who was just a pilot, had no ambition to be a politician, who had married a Italian woman, Sonia Gandhi, but now first son had died, so she wanted him to come into politics, and she started supporting parties and the people who owed personal allegiance rather than merit, so which caused many capable leaders to leave the party. Corruption also became associated with this party in the 1970s onward. One that damaged its reputation badly at that time was the Bofors artillery gun purchase agreement for the Indian Army from Sweden for mountain warfare. Okay, that really hurt its reputation. Okay, so there's the decline of Congress Party began. India had food securities in 1960s, and the economy, even though growing at around 4 to 5% in the 1970s and 80s, not a bad growth. It's higher than the population growth. failed to meet even faster rising expectations of the growing middle class. One of the reasons was child mortality was brought down by the public health services. My eldest brother was part of it. So I'm familiar because I used to go with him in the villages when I was young. This is when the BJP's rise begins, okay, in the 80s. This is the material reason for the Congress Party's decline. The economic problems. That's when the Green Revolution was launched. Privatization, large farms with the high yielding variety wheat and its problems that created a lot of unrest, gave rise to the Khalistani movement in Punjab. Anyway, back to BJP. Jan Sangh was its predecessor. It was founded in 1951. It was RSS connected, sponsored political party. So since RSS is a social services, cultural, volunteer right organization, it said have nothing to do with politics, but it is in fact the power. It is a de facto power behind BJP, not de jure. It controls its political organization, including BJP, which was earlier Jan Sangh, renamed Bharatiya Janata Party, which in English translation would be Indian People's Party. Funny how a right wing also tries to name themselves to sound like they are party of the left, right? Known now by its acronym BJP, right? The Bharatiya Janata Party. So that name it acquired in 1980. Its cadres came from Jan Sangh then, and in turn from its ideological parent, the RSS. All BJP leaders are members of RSS. Not until Modi, BJP had any authoritarian leader, however. Merit was the criteria in BJP for rise in the party, which is also the discipline in the RSS, even though both are right-wing formations favoring upper caste men. Usually in RSS, it's only the Brahmins who become their head, okay? They don't call them president, they call them head manager, who have been, okay, with Modi's exception. Modi is now an exception. He's also from the lower caste, OBC, other backward caste, as castes are legally categorized in India. So this brings me to my fifth bullet point, privatization of state industry and BJP supporters' class character. Both the Congress Party and the BJP started in 1991, both of them, Congress in 91, BJP all through proponents of new liberalism, okay? However, actually BJP in its previous formation was not, but around 90, it also adopts that. However, under Modi's last 10-year rule, Indian monopoly capital has been given much greater support by the government. Privatization of previously government-owned industry, there was a lot of it in the public sector under Nehru and Indira Gandhi. And she even nationalized the banks, actually. And actually that benefited smaller business. So, so 22 finance and industrial business billionaire capitalists have hugely benefited in the last 10 years of Modi government's economic policies. One in particular is Adani Group, which came from his home state, who heavily backed him during his first election run. In the previous 10 years of Congress Party government, privatization was also part of their agenda, but back then, left was strong, left unions were strong, and left was able to mobilize workers, peasants, and successfully block most of the privatization in that period of 2004 to 14 when Congress Party ruled along with its allies. Okay, now in India, a little bit about caste structure. The upper caste, as I mentioned, are 17% of the population. These, along with the upper sections of the middle caste, the OBC, which are about 40% of the Hindu population, have disposable incomes. So together, people with disposable income, that means they are living beyond just the very basic to live on, is 25% of the population in India. Maybe you can say 28%, but I think 25 is roughly a right estimate. So about 350 to 400 million people who will benefit from the neoliberal economics of Modi. Approximately 90% of these are supporters of BJP. This is the class base of BJP. A small percentage of that is supporting the left and Congress, but that's a pretty small part. Not more than 10, 15%. 85 to 90%. They also support the Hindutva ideology. Why? Because they see the threat to their incomes and privileges and identity from lower castes and Muslims. They don't want to share that. So then I come to the Muslim. There are 200 million Muslims in India who have suffered, all through, but particularly since 1991, and especially with the rise of Hindutva, who get far fewer jobs in privately held businesses, as most of these are upper caste Hindu-owned, the big businesses Hindu-owned. Medium-sized businesses also largely Hindu-owned. There are a few exceptions to it. So Muslims and lower caste, as well as the forest dwellers, also suffer more in a liberal capitalist society that has emerged in India since 1991. Hindutva has suppressed the Muslims today so much because of these campaigns, the Godra thing, and then continuous talk about them as infiltrators, people who produce too many children. Modi was saying all this in the elections, okay? And that is actually should be prosecuted, but the Indian Constitution does not allow you to preach hatred. But, that's how politics has become, how corrupted it has, that even what is illegal is being practiced. So the Muslims have practically no voice. They have few leaders, but they were pretty much silent in this election. BJP has not a single minister in the 72-member cabinet they have proposed for 24. They didn't have a single minister in the last one. They had a governor in the state of Kerala that was previously from Congress, is a Muslim guy from my hometown, and that's about all they had. They used to have a couple more ministers, but they're not ministers anymore. Anyway, they're still part of BJP. There are a couple of Muslims who are part of BJP. And there may be others. But anyway, just like here, very few Blacks ever supported the Republican Party, right? And so it's sort of like that. Another 20% of Hindu population, that's the other base of BJP, they are mostly poor and lower caste Hindus, which often are the same, near lumpen or in actual lumpen conditions, mostly urban dwellers who are on government survival benefits. They get 12 pounds of grain per month from the state and a few other benefits, a gas cylinder and a few other things. Anyway, cheaper cell phones and all that. They don't actually get it from the government, but cell phones are cheap thanks to Chinese phone manufacturing. Also, so this section also blames the Muslims for their condition, kind of like how in Cicero, when I lived in Chicago, they were Polish neighborhoods. Cicero was and they hated the Blacks so much they wouldn't let them walk. Actually, Martin Luther King had to actually gather his people and walk through Cicero. So it's basically, you don't want to be the Dalit, you're just above Dalit ladder, Dalit rung, you don't want to be like that. It's kind of like that. So they have become effectively, for ideological prop, this around 20% of Hindu population, they fall in that category. So together, BJP has a vote base block of about a vote block of around 42 to 42%. Okay. The Congress Party, the only other nationwide party, which was very powerful. In fact, at its peak, it had more than 400 members in parliament. This is right after Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her own bodyguards in 1984. The next election, the population gave her son, who became the prime minister, Rajiv Gandhi. So from that peak, they have fallen. They had fallen in the last parliament that just went out, just 52 seats. It could not even qualify to be the leader of the opposition, which required, in Indian parliament requires a minimum of 10% or 55 seats. So Congress Party lately, however, has been revitalizing, spearheaded by Rahul Gandhi, but it has a long way to go to challenge the BJP, whose fall, I think, has begun. That brings me to my sixth of 8 points, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's Mahatma Gandhi strategy, or MK Gandhi
And
strategy.
Raj, by the way, you have like about 8 or 10 minutes left.
Okay, well, I'll finish in that time. Thank you. Rahul Gandhi is 53 years old. He is the great-grandson of Nehru, India's first prime minister, and a leader in the struggle for anti-colonial struggle, and grandson of Indira Gandhi, who was assassinated when Rahul was 13 years old, and he was living with her, and he saw her bullet-riddled body. And then he lost his father, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, who was also assassinated with a bomb when Rahul was 21 years old. You can imagine two traumas, a person suffering so early in life. And now, unfortunately, we are seeing even greater traumas, as you know, in Gaza and also elsewhere. He was ill at ease. So he was ill at ease, awkward in expressing his thoughts, little jumbled thoughts, and was much derided by Modi and his party men as a spoiled brat of a rich family. Unlike Modi, he is also not a gifted orator. Modi is a gifted orator. Not the oratory I want, but he's a gifted orator. Rahul Gandhi was kicked out of the BJP-controlled last parliament, of which he was a member, for asking Modi to explain his relationship with Adani, a Gujarat billionaire industrialist, and a favorite of Modi, who is by far the greatest beneficiary of state projects, ports, mines, ports, and all kinds of things. But Rahul Gandhi, and instead of answering the question, they said, well, you can't do this. This is not, they threw him out of the parliament. But the opposition was weak. But Rahul Gandhi did something after that Mahatma Gandhi did, okay? With whom he only shares a name, as I said. He doesn't come, had no family relation. He walked across the country in the past 2 years, one south to north, and next east to west. Both walks are about 2,500 miles long. Okay, it's not a small walk. And like the original Gandhi, met and talked with ordinary poor people, citizens along the way, patiently listening to their problems and needs. And like Mahatma Gandhi, he began promoting the idea of brotherhood of men and kindness to all, which contrasted with Modi's hate and negativity against opponents, and particularly against Muslims. Rahul Gandhi also returned the Congress Party and, in effect, all allies in the India alliance to a social democratic path, at least for the election, which was the original Congress Party of his great-grandfather. A majority, 80% of Hindus, I can tell you, do not want their religion used against people of other faiths, and a vast majority of Indians support the idea of economic justice. That is, they oppose profiteering, although about half the Hindu population is now infected with this this hate business. I don't know how they live with it, but that's not their natural calling. But it's too early to say how far the Congress Party will succeed. But it seems like it has turned the corner. That brings me to the seventh point. How did the opposition improve its election performance in this past election? Congress Party initiated Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance. Notice all those start with letters that make the acronym India, a coalition of 26 political parties. And it was in opposition to National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, which BJP headed with even more parties, 38 parties. So together, that's 64 parties. That's Indian democracy. Bourgeois democracy as it is, that's democracy. Congress Party crafted a radical social justice political manifesto. Minimum income to poverty-stricken families, given to the eldest woman of the family clan, government jobs to the unemployed, paid training to unemployed educated youth, greater social security and equity, something like Roosevelt's New Deal, okay? The corporate media ignored it, but Modi saw a threat in it and attacked it vigorously in his dozens, if not hundreds of his. Modi might have spoken over 100 times in campaign speeches, heavily distorting and outright lying often about what was in it. Well, it kind of backfired on BJP and Modi. Millions of copies were downloaded, and people began reading it. And they saw what Modi was saying was not true, and the poor really liked it. So the other thing I want to talk about a little bit is the election was the longest, this election. It was 7 weeks long. It was longest in India's history. That's because it was particularly stretched by Modi favoring election commission. Okay, I already described that. Why? Because Modi is an energetic man and an effective orator. And this long stretch allowed him to go and speak in hundreds of rallies. I think it's over. He must have spoken over 100, although I can't verify it. But its unintended consequence was that the voice of the opposition, ignored by the mass media, was carried by a few dedicated social media journalists. Now, BJP has a whole army of social media too, okay? But just a few hundred, such journalists who still care about truth began to explain what was going on. And there are enough people with cell phones and and computers, and that began to spread. And so it reached the impoverished masses, although slowly, but the 7 week allowed it for them to see both the alliance, opposition alliance platform, actually was Congress's, but also they saw the hollowness of Modi's speeches. So that had an impact. The three communist parties, now a little bit about communist parties because we are in a Marxist forum. The three communist parties together won 8 seats, and the Socialist Party, which is primarily limited to my home state, of course, the largest state, which won 37 seats, more than BJP in my home state of UP. So it is the third largest party. It is the third largest party in parliament after BJP and Congress. Congress has 99 seats. And the poor and the lowest caste voters saw Congress and Socialist Party in my home state genuinely as their protectors. BJP also lost in Maharashtra, West Bengal, second and third most populous states, and in Tamil Nadu, which I think is the fourth or fifth. I think it's the fourth largest state, if I'm not mistaken. So all this still remained limited. And so BJP still won 240 seats and NDA 293, while India won effectively 234 seats. The rest of the 16 seats won are independents, not with either of these two alliances. So now finally I come to my conclusion. There is a struggle, ongoing struggle between Indian monopoly capital, which requires a dictatorship, and the ongoing democratic revolution in India. Reignited, and of course, the bourgeoisie cannot complete the democratic revolution, as those of you who have learned, who have read Lenin, know that, but it was reignited by Congress Party's new leadership and the Socialist Party of my home state, Communist parties and allied regional parties, even they're like Trinamool Congress, that's a breakaway from Congress Party that rules West Bengal. So they are similar. The Hindutva ideology is the vehicle today for Indian monopoly capital under Modi. But Modi is not a representative of G7 monopolists in India. Okay. He's a supporter of BRICS, which is growing in number as the US heading the G7 tries to still control the world's economy and resources, which is the current international geopolitical struggle, as you know. In this election, this Hindutva ideology has been denied a mandate. In a sense, it has been defeated, although not decisively. Monopoly capital will try and continue its march in India under Modi's third term, but the democratic revolution has been strengthened in this election process. If the democratic revolution succeeds over time, it will eventually, and it may need a socialist revolution to make it go all the way, which is not on the horizon at the moment. It will eventually pave the way. So if it pushes enough, it will pave the way for socialist revolution, or if the socialist revolution happened, it will push the democratic revolution to its completion, just as it did in Russia. But this will not happen, in my opinion anyway, until the global democratic revolution in geopolitics that is underway called multipolarity. And until multipolarity succeeds in ending decisively the unipolarity of G7. And I know there are Marxists who disagree with me, and I respect them, but I don't agree with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raj. That was a very good presentation of what's happening in India. And thanks for going into the past and the class structure and structure that led to these events. What you say is the loss of the BJP in the elections. So right now, I'd like to give some information about the oncoming programs. On June 23rd, next week, we're going to have a session on socialism in Laos. We don't hear about Laos that much, so I am also anticipating a lot of information to come from there. That's the Comrade Harrington of the Ireland Communist Party will be speaking, so there's going to be a lot of interesting information coming from there. And on June 30th, the next week, Bahman Azad of the U.S. Peace Council will be speaking on Iran, multipolarity and imperialism. I believe that, Iran is still in the crosshairs of imperialism while it's Islamic system is under heavy pressure from its people. So that's going to be a very interesting topic, I believe. But on July 7th, then we are coming to another elections that's happening, the U.S. presidential election and the threat of fascism. And our friend Greg Goddles is coming back. He has spoken at our forum many times. So he's going to be presenting the U.S. presidential elections and the threat of fascism. So with that, we are going to go back to our question and answers. Let's remember that the questions and comments will be limited to around 2 minutes. Let's try to keep it that way. And Raj will try to answer those as they come in one by one. At this point, I have Michael Hoey's hand is risen. And if you want to speak or ask questions, please use the reactions button on the bottom of your screen, Zoom reactions, and then you can raise your hand, and I will try to go as they come in the sequence and try to limit the 2-minute structure. So, Michael, why don't you go ahead? Oh, just a minute. I think you can unmute yourselves as you speak, and then Raj will answer. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, yeah, it wasn't allowing me to unmute at first. My question's about the Adivasi, the original people in the Northeast, Northwest, and maybe even in the South. Are they encouraged to participate in the process? And are they at the point where they can even own land, or are they still kind of treated like animals?
Well, by and large, they're not treated like animals, but they are also, along with the Dalits, the most oppressed of India's population. They form about 9%. They dwell in forests. These are forest dwellers, Aboriginal people. They're outside of all castes, just like the Dalits are. Uh, by the way, BJP plays with politics like the Democratic Party did. So they appointed the president of India is an Adivasi woman. Okay, her name is Murmu, and she doesn't have much power, in particularly under Modi. I mean, president in India is the constitutional head, is the head of the Indian army, and can dissolve the parliament, but generally the executive is the prime minister. So so roughly it plays the role, actually a stronger role than the King of England does. Okay, in India they did actually have a power, but by and large this is where CPI ML, those who have not taken on the parliamentary path, are fighting along with them in the forest, because the forest land is being given to these multinational and Indian big corporations, because there's a lot of mineral riches there. And so they are part of, I mean, I don't know specifically how much they have moved forward, but they are one of the oppressed group of people, about 9% of the population. And they have to be brought in any movement that is progressive. Congress Party does bring them too, but all parties do, major parties, but kind of more symbolic way. The problem is with the bourgeois system, the capitalist system itself. And so that's about all I can tell you about that.
Thank you. Then we are going to Richard Wright. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned something, Raj, you mentioned something that kind of piqued my interest a little bit in your presentation, and that was that about the same time as China allowed foreign direct investments into its country, shortly thereafter, I think you said India also followed suit. And I'm kind of curious to see one of the defining characteristics of the CC of China is that they restricted they still maintain they maintained and still maintain control of foreign direct investment. And I'm kind of curious, was the same true of India as well? Could you compare the two restrictions on FDI? Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah, I don't know about China on this, but in India, foreign direct investment previously had to have they had to have more than 50% Indian participation. So that has been reduced, except in areas of what they call strategic areas. which they cannot invest. But now they have increasingly allowed it. There are still areas in which foreign direct investment is not permitted, or to have a significant proportion of Indian participation in Indian business participation, basically to have them learn this thing. I don't know how it was done in China, but that's how it is done in India. But one reason why it didn't flow, even though this foreign direct investment went to China in 89, China opened it for 1889 and India in 91, is a strategic reason of the United States wanting to use China to put the pressure and ultimately expedite the system in USSR to fall. So it basically breaking the communist unity. So that was also strategic, and also because CPC is so powerful in China, local laws they can run roughshod and get
Raj,
things.
I think you're breaking up. You're breaking up in sound. I think you may want to maybe move or repeat the
I'm
last
getting
couple of
closer to the
sentences.
microphone. Does it help now?
Yeah, it's better. It's better.
Okay. So I think in China it's different because Chinese Communist Party had complete control. In India, they're all the laws of state and local laws create a problem. Infrastructure was also less developed in India. So socialist path of China prepared them better. In India, it was more backward. So there's a number of factors that contributed to FTA not coming to India. But as far as this is as much as I can tell you right now, but I can get back to you, Richard, on your question later, individually.
Thank you, Raj. Now we go to Jean. Go ahead, Jean. Unmute yourself.
Okay, well, thanks, Raj. This was a very good talk. I really, as always, I'm impressed with your preparation, and also impressed with the fact that India is such a huge country, and simply to hold an election in this country, I think is a major achievement, and I'm impressed with that. But my question or comment is, or question really is, I've related this before, is my experience when I was on a delegation to Cuba. And I remember one of the participants, one of us North Americans, said, well, you say you have democracy in Cuba, but you only have one political party. How can you have democracy if you only have one party? And the response was, well, under Batista, we had 7 political parties and no democracy. Now we have one political party and we have democracy. And I guess I would say partly, and that goes back, I think, to Marx's comments on the Paris Commune, that I think, this, I would ask this question, a couple of kind of questions. One is, yes, you have elections, but do you really have democracy in the sense that these really represent the people and not wealthy donors and other things? And that also is trying to find the how much money is donated by whom to our Indian elections. We know here in the United States that all this material is published and so forth. And I'm just wondering what the situation is in China, in India. But again, thank you.
Yeah, sure. In India, I don't know about China, but in India, what happened was that under Modi's last 10-year term, they passed a law. They had a huge majority. They passed a law that allows donations to be made by any organization, corporation, without disclosing who they are doing it, and without that organization having to disclose where they got their funds from. And so they got huge donation from corporate money. And ultimately, Supreme Court got involved in it. And they said, no, you have to reveal who it is. The public has a right to know. And but they've been dragging their feet on it. Okay, so they wanted to wait till after the election. So it hasn't been, but the estimate is billions of rupees went to Modi was right from the beginning a corporate creature. I mean, he was a candidate of picked by the corporate India, and heavily backed. The media is corporate, and they created, it's kind of like the Ronald Reagan of India, except Ronald Reagan was smooth and well, both are charismatic, right? Right wingers. And so is Modi, but he's a creature of that. So now I think it'll come out. The opposition is strong. They can pressure. The Supreme Court is involved. Previously, he even corrupted the Supreme Court, which was the previous Supreme Court Chief Justice was corrupted. But this Supreme Court Chief Justice is not so, and is taken to challenge the government on this thing. And Modi doesn't dare, unless he has a military coup, which I don't think is going to work in India, and I don't think he's going to try.
And is this really democracy?
Yes, it is a democracy. It's a bourgeois democracy.
Okay, bourgeois democracy. Okay.
It's not people's democracy. It's actually, I would say, Indian democracy is more mixed than just calling bourgeois democracy. It's becoming more and more bourgeois democracy because, I mean, if you have 64 parties running in an election, it is localized democracy, but ultimately it is bourgeois democracy in the sense money does play a role. But as I explained in my thing, despite the money, they suffered a setback. Okay, so the democracy hasn't gone away, but the bourgeois democracy is not a real democracy. It's not a fraud, but it's not a real democracy. I agree with you there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Now we go to Janet. Please unmute yourself, Janet.
Yes, hi, thanks. Thank you, Raj. Great presentation. A few things. You used the term reservationists, or I mean, I couldn't understand.
Reservations. Reservation means you have, in colleges, for example, did I cut you off from your question, or should I answer or wait till you ask?
Well, could I finish and then,
Yeah, sorry, I jumped in too soon.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And could you talk about the positions the leading Indian political parties take on the Gaza situation and India's relationship with Israel? And then finally, I don't recall you're talking about the 1947 India-Pakistan partition and in the history you went into and in the context of what you were trying to describe. Could you talk a little bit more about that? That's it. Okay. Thank you.
So first, reservation. What do I mean by reservation? This affirmative action in India is stronger than here. Here, it is only a goal to get the backward people who are left behind by society to be brought in. They set a goal, and then you have to meet, it's pretty mild kind of a thing. If it doesn't happen, there are no consequences. In India, this is actually, there's a law that follows the constitution, which says you have to give reservations in colleges to the backward castes. Okay, it is not to Muslims, but Muslims also have backward castes. Everybody has castes. Christians have castes. I mean, a caste system is primary thing in India, division of society. So if you are a backward Muslim, you will get the benefits. Reservation is in college and government job. So they'll say 40% of the government jobs will have reservation for Muslims, or 30%, and or backward castes. But you have to have qualified candidate for it. And sometimes if they're not qualified, they'll keep the reservation will get added to. That's how they keep on increasing. Then people say, oh, almost half of it is reservation. Well, that quota was not filled, and it doesn't go away. So they actually have places in colleges and universities. These are public colleges and public universities. Now in private, it doesn't apply. So that's that. Now about India's partition, it would have made my talk hours long. I would say simply the fight for splitting of India is not about Islam. It is about retention of feudal privileges, which used religion. Because see, Congress movement was progressive, and they had on their platform to have land reform, not the radical land reform of Lenin, but the bourgeois land reform, but land reform nevertheless. They were going to break up all concentrated lands in the hand of landlords. It was carried out. That threat is what motivated the landowners in the western part of India and to start agitation, and they use Muslim religion as a way to say, well, okay, you will not get fairness in Hindu India. So the division occurred along this emotional line that Muslims need a country. If Muslims needed a country, why would they break up again into Bangladesh? India did the surgery, but actually the breakup came from within the contradiction of Pakistan. Both sides are Muslim. So the idea that Muslim constitute a nation is a false thesis. It's actually a feudal class. But a lot of people died in that. I think it's estimated around 1 million people died in the bloodshed that occurred. And it damaged both countries tremendously. But 200, I mean, more people, Muslims chose to stay in India than be part of Pakistan. The movement was not, was a small, relatively small. People came from both sides. Hindus came from Pakistan to India, and Muslims went from here to there. It's a tragic story, terrible story, but that's is misunderstood as a legitimate country forming out of the need for Muslims to have a country. That wasn't true.
And then the Gaza.
Yeah, the left generally supports the Palestinian struggle. Congress Party is more strongly supports it, although they were already having relationship with Israel before BJP came to power. BJP and particularly Modi have accentuated that relationship. But even Modi has said now that war should end and the Palestinian, there should be 2 states. But this is sort of not a radical stand. It's not in support of Gaza thing. It's pretty mild, and it's kind of like a slap on the wrist, so to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had Richard Fallenbaum on the stack, but he disappeared, so I am on it. And if you want to ask questions or give comments, please use the reaction buttons. Oh, Richard is back. Okay, so we'll go to Richard, and then we usually allow people who have not spoken to speak first, and then in the second round, we'll have people who have already spoken. Go, Richard.
Thank you, Raj, for your presentation. In the Western countries, the parties that promote multiculturalism and economic populism are universally loyal to U.S. finance capital and slavishly loyal to U.S. imperialism. How would you evaluate the Congress Party and the coalition? Are they simply going to replace Indian monopoly capital with U.S. monopoly capital or finance capital, or is it a genuine coalition?
Well, that's what supporters of Modi claim they will do, but I don't think so. I think there's a long history of, it comes from Indian nationalist movement, that they will not yield to imperialism's demands and become totally subservient. India, in fact, Putin said there are few sovereign countries left in the world, and he counted China and India among them, not Western Europe. So I don't think this will change. They all want, the common thing between the two parties is they want investment. You know, they see this vehicle for advancing, growing the economy, like China has done. So they will do that. They will also buy military equipment and have other deals, investments, oil and all that with the United States. But primary supplier of military weaponry still is Russia to India. And they've resisted the pressure, for example, to cut those ties. And in fact, so whether Modi stays or goes, that policy will not change. Rahul Gandhi is actually unlikely to become prime minister, but he made it clear when he was visiting. He was asked the same question. He said, "No, our foreign policy will not change should we come to power."
Thank
The
you.
left is different. I mean, of course, left is different. They would like to go further, right? So, but the left is not likely to come to power anytime soon, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the question, follow up actually on Richard Fallenbaum, and then I have Emmanuel Ness on the stack. Raj, as imperialism changes and seems to get weaker, the multipolarity that you mentioned seems to rise. Yes, that's true. But the multipolarity rises in countries of capitalism. And when we say imperialism is changing, I think we mean to say that integration to imperialism of the undeveloped countries become much more powerful. And this integration actually maybe even eliminates the foreign direct investment, because the monopoly capital and the other capital we have in these countries are dependent on imperialism and its investments to not only investments, but in technology, in know-how, in licensing, in market share, in exports, all of these that makes these capitals in these countries live is controlled by imperialism. So India's capital and the monopoly capital is very much integrated with the imperialist monopoly capital. So it creates a contradiction of the road that India wants to take. Yes, Putin says that because it's in his interest to show the sovereignty of the countries that support Russia. But the problem comes when the foreign policy turns towards Russia or China, but the main material basis of support that the Indian capitalists have comes from the other side. So there has to be a resolution. And do you think that this resolution is going to be a breakaway from the current imperialist centers to strengthen the multipolarity of BRICS? Or do you think that BRICS is bound to, fall into the same line as maybe I don't like to use that word sub-imperialism because it has other meanings, but BRICS may become the second layer in the imperialist power structure. I'd like to hear what you have on that.
Well, Okay, now imperialism has two aspects, right? One is military control of the planet. The other is economic, right? Now, in the economic sense, when capitalism reaches imperialist stage, it loses its dynamics. Okay, this is how Lenin described it. It's moribund. And the basic reason, although Lenin did say it, but Marx has already explained that profit rate has a tendency to drop. So it is not just, you can't just sit on your capital, you have to invest somewhere. So it's not that it's only the third world that needs imperial capital. Imperial capital needs the third world, of course, for increasing the profit rate. But previously, how they could get more profit out of it, what Lenin called, there was a term he used for this is almost plundering type of profit, much higher profit rate, which then he used to buy out allegiance of a section of the working class. It did. So these two aspects are there. And today, because militarily domination of large countries is very difficult, right? In other words, China has nuclear weapons, China has power, Russia has even more nuclear weapons. You can't militarily dominate. You have to undermine them economically, which the United States tries constantly, but it's not working. Okay, it could work on Iraq, for example, or Libya, but it's not working here. So India falls in that large group of countries, which its own capitalist class has its ambition. And of course, all capitalists are linked by trade, okay? And the larger capital will have a higher thing, but the domination is become impossible. And that's where I think I have a slight difference with you on thinking about it. So I think in India, for example, Modi is backing finance capital, monopoly capital in India. At the same time, is inviting investment, direct foreign investment to India, just like Chinese did, and he wants to compete with China. The biggest investor in India today is China, not United States. Okay, so while in India the biggest enemy, they say the danger is China, but that is the biggest investor also. That's a common perception that China is a threat to us along the border, but they also get their capital and investment. So I think the situation has changed in the latter quarter of the last century. It is not like when military and economic dominance of G7 was such that nobody could get out of line. That's what I think my answer would be.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Emmanuel. Please unmute yourself, please, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Mehmet. And thank you very much, Raj, for that presentation. It was very enlightening. My question has to do with the left and the Marxist left in India, as well as the shift in Indian politics to state ruled politics. The first would be the degree to which the CPIM was successful in West Bengal, not just with respect to winning elections, but being competitive in elections. And also the communists in Kerala, you know, they still have power there, and I was wondering if they still maintain that. And then secondly, is there still a shift toward state governments as opposed to state parties as opposed to national parties, which forces the BJP and Congress into alliances?
I think the movement towards coalition politics, which means regional parties becoming strong, central parties weak, that is a secular tendency. India is such a varied country that it is probably more suitable. So that this is your last question, but BJP tried to reverse it, tried to use Hindutva ideology to kind of emerge like Congress had emerged as a national party, which disintegrated for reasons I explained. So, so that's one part, that I think coalition politics is going to be there until quite some time. The other part you asked about the decline of CPIM, which was a very powerful party. The left together used to send about 50 left communist parties used to have 50 members, almost 10%, 9% in the parliament. Today they are 1.5%. So they lost in Bengal. The struggle was over industrialization and land purchase and things like that, in which this woman from Trinamool Congress defeated them. And so their big contribution was land reform. That's what they carried forth, why CPI became so powerful in Bengal. But partly it is the shift, again, the global shift away from socialism. Socialism couldn't solve all its problems. It affected them too. They don't hold state power in the center. So, for example, Modi invited the industrialists who had problems in West Bengal, and they went there. And he said, okay, I'll give you all the permits you want, and I'll expedite it. Whereas there, it was a fight whether the peasants got enough money for their land, which was sort of egged on by Trinamool Congress to defeat CPIM. So, and they didn't have their leadership was not, they were kind of academic type people, not like the previous leaders who came from fighting on the streets. So in Kerala, it is different. Also, they were mostly high caste. In Kerala, they introduced lower caste. The chief minister of Kerala comes from a Dalit community. So this is one thing the communists had a weakness, which was changed, at least in Kerala. Keralite communists recognized that you can't disregard caste. Same thing happened in my home state of Uttar Pradesh, where the Socialist Party came up with the theory that the class basis is not sufficient. In Indian context, you have to recognize the importance of the caste division, which is a class division of old times. So I think both my home state, where they have defeated BJP, and in Kerala, that shows that kind of integration, which is what I call the democratic revolution, right? Advancement of the lower caste in India is part of the democratic revolution. That is what the communists did not handle. The other part is really the fact that it is a global wave against, at least for the time being, against communist parties and socialism, in which they got caught.
Thank you. So we can have the second round. People who already asked questions could ask. If there are no hands, I'd like to go maybe first to open a new discussion here. Is that, Raj, you mentioned that Modi, a fascist, is the leader in a bourgeois democracy. You defended the bourgeois democracy as the system in India, but you also mentioned that the democratic revolution is being done or has not been completed, but is in the works. As far as I know, the bourgeois democracy is a result of the democratic revolution. So if the democratic revolution has not completed yet, how can you define the system of India as a bourgeois democracy led by a fascist? I think it's contradictory. Thank you.
But I think you're getting caught up in terms rather than.
Okay.
I start from the. I mean, this is how it appears wrong, but you got to go with facts on the ground and what's going on. That's why I went through rather lengthy presentation to show you what was actually happening. So the democratic revolution in India required overthrow of feudalism, which was done in a bad way, an incomplete way, not like Lenin's radical overthrow of feudalism. But it was done, and one of the outcome was that Pakistan got created because that's where they resisted. They could find resistance. But that proceeded. I mean, all societies, feudalism breaks down. And this patriarchy and upper caste dominance is actually pre-feudalist structures of Indian societies, peculiar to India, certain peculiarities that are very much part of India, because India is not like China, where 90% of people are Han people and only 10% are other people. In India, it's a real mixture, okay, of people from the steppes, the people who went to Ukraine, they came to India. There are all kinds of people in India, from China, from everywhere. India is inhabited by different nationality, ethnicities, linguistic groups, and it's a very complex society, much more complex than Chinese. And so how will the democratic revolution now, I don't want to get caught up on this thing, democratic revolution is what advances capitalism. So capitalism is advancing in China, in India, and the democratic revolution is folding under it, unfolding under it. Now Modi wants to go to monopoly capital. Monopoly capital is in contradiction with democracy. Democracy is only consistent with earlier form of competitive capitalism, which has ceased to exist now. And so it's monopoly. So fascism is not inconsistent with it. I didn't call him fascist, but it's a fascist-like movement, I think. So I didn't actually call it fascist, but he cannot act like European fascist. In India, it is impossible. Nobody can do that. It's such a mixture of so many varied people, it won't work. So they're trying it, but they're failing, in my opinion. That's what the failure was, this election. Now, about democracy, it's a democracy of sorts. So in India has a very large natural economy, which means it's CMC type of economy. There's no gain at the other end. It's one use value exchange with another. That's the natural economy of India. Modi's tried to shift it and make it a capitalist economy. Okay, that's one of the efforts he has made. It damaged a lot of small business that way. And so I think democracy a natural economy-based democracy would be different, right? It will be more democratic than a bourgeois democracy. Bourgeois democracy is not truly democratic. It's a heavily tainted democracy, in which people vote, but money rules, right? That's what bourgeois democracy is. You get a few things, you make some peace with working classes' demands, but it's all within the system of capitalism. In monopoly capitalism, you don't even do that. So fascism would be perfectly compatible, except fascism cannot be brought into India very easily. That's what Modi and his party are finding out. That's
Thank you.
the best I can do to answer you.
Oh, I'll come back to that later. Okay, thank you. Now we have Norma. Norma, go ahead, please.
Hold your hat on, Raj. I agree with you about Mehmet's comments being about terminology rather more than content, and I think that's important. And it's surprising coming from you, because I'm saying, the people of various places are calling themselves communists, and you're talking about how they're capitalist. So I keep telling you you're wrong, and you keep not agreeing with me. But I think it's really important to realize that nations do move along in certain ways, and we don't have a big tendency towards nations becoming more fascistic, I think. I mean, in spite of the horror being committed by Israel, which was horrible from, well, call it 76 or several hundred years ago. But it's still not that it's going in fascistic. The people are rising. People know what's going on, and they're following the ideas of self-liberation. They think they have the inroads, and they're proceeding in that direction. I say that people have been struggling with liberatory terms for tens of thousands of years against certain oppression. But now I think there's the time to manifest and actually continue in a growingly global way.
Thank you, Nora. So we're going to go to Michael. Michael, please unmute yourself. Michael Hoey.
Yeah, my question has to do with India's defense industry. Apparently, they're trying to turn themselves into a major defense exporter. And also, there's a lot of roads and railroads being built. And what I'm wondering is, are they doing that with what do you call domestic investment, or are they trying to try to get foreign investment to fund all that?
Well, one of the military sales they have made to Philippines is that of BrahMos missile, which is probably the fastest missile to date. It is a joint Russian-Indian project. Brahmaputra is a river in India, actually flows into Bangladesh now, and Moskva so the second part, BrahMos, stands for these two rivers, Moskva River, I think. Anyway, so they have sold it to there. Yeah, they're trying to build that military capacity to be able to sell. Well, the basic production rule of anything is that unless you produce something in mass, it becomes very expensive. So if you sell military hardware, it is cheaper for you what you're doing for yourself. And that's why their military sales occur. It's part of the system of production on a profit basis, right? It's a part of capitalism. And it's basically mass production idea. Even under socialism, if you produce something small scale, it will have more cost in terms of amount of labor in it. You may not sell it for profit, but it will have more labor than if you could mass produce it. So India is doing that. And I forget what was the other part of your question. Sorry.
If they're relying on foreign investment, or do they have enough domestic banking capabilities?
Yeah. So the cement industry in India is very large now. When I left in 66, you have to get a license to get a bag of cement. It was limited. They've increased enormously the cement capacity. When I go there, construction going on everywhere. Roads and bridges are being built primarily by Indian firms in Indian state. So that's Indian capital. High technology, I think they get investments from overseas. So, for example, they've got a deal to make jet engines for Boeing now. Boeing jet engines will be made in, and they're looking for that because they're useful for them. They want to gain that technological thing. For Boeing, it is cheaper production, right? And Americans are now looking to go to other places than China because they see China as a rival. So India wants to take advantage of that. Of course, they have Chinese investments too. So as I mentioned, so I can't give you a detailed thing on it. I can research and write to you about it, but at the moment, my understanding is that the Indian economy infrastructure is being developed pretty fast. And actually, they have a capable minister who's doing it, who's an RSS member. Okay, they all have to be RSS. And he's very capable and is running this pretty well for the last 10 years. And he's going to be doing that for roads and bridges throughout India. And infrastructure is better. Every time I go to India, the airports and roads and bridges are better. So there is work going on like that.
Yeah, thank you. We have Richard Wright wants to ask a question or comment.
Yeah, once again, I'll take the the challenge here, if you will. We keep talking about foreign direct investment, and I think that that's sort of looking at things through eyes that are, say, 100 years or maybe 150 years too old. If we're really gonna challenge capitalism, we've really got to meet on how they actually see things. And they no longer see things in terms of countries. Their manufacturing is set up irrespective of national borders. So we should no longer talk in terms of foreign direct investment. I mean, I understand that's a commonly accepted term, and I appreciate it. But it's still it's antiquated. I mean, we really need RTX, Raytheon, no longer I mean, it spans the globe. It doesn't care where it sets up plants, except insofar as how much it costs them to ship things, to sell things, to manufacture things. You know, to them, they are global world enterprises. And if we're going to fight these people, we need to start looking through their eyes and fight them on their ground. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
But,
you.
a quick
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Raj.
Just a quick comment. What I wanted to make sure is that where you and I may differ or agree on is if Indian company wants to buy Raytheon, I don't think the United States will permit that.
Okay,
So-
then, oh,
See, what I'm saying
you
is
had more.
capitalism is nation-based, although it may have global reach, which it is always a global system. But the power of the nation state is tied to capitalism. You can't separate it.
Okay, thanks. Then now we go to Anne. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry I was late. So I'm probably way off base, but this is something that's just been troubling me for the last couple of days. I got a message from a friend that the temperature in Delhi was over 130 Fahrenheit, which I'm in Texas and 100 feels like it's unsurvivable. What is the government going to do about that?
Well, okay. First of all, I don't think it was 130. It was very hot. I will have a hard time surviving. But they were getting 52 degrees Celsius, which if I divided by 5 and multiply by 9, I have a calculator here because I used to be able to do this.
117, I think.
Yeah, no, it's more than that. Plus 32.
126.
126, yes. So I never, when I grew up in India to the age of 21, ever experienced anything higher than 114 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this is certainly global warming having an effect. Cutting of forests is having an effect. Reduction of snow on the mountains having its effect. Urban centers reflecting of sun's heat by hard surfaces having an effect. And what was so cruel that this election was run through these high temperatures, And so what the government is doing what many governments are doing, is like Modi says, no one single-use plastic, for example. They are increasing tremendously solar power. Okay, but solar power is less than 3% of energy. So and they're not. You are absolutely right, Anne, to ask this question. So the development in China, and I'm glad that China has become a more prosperous country, but that's not the solution. If we are looking for socialism to survive in this planet, we have to think differently. We have to have a much more radical solution to human habitat than and all these measures taken to alleviate the problem, they are very ineffective. And in India, I marvel too how people survive. They not only survived, they went to vote, stood in line in 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Poor people who are not even well fed, many older people. So there were many deaths because of it. And I blame the Election Commission and Modi government for their selfishness to win the election. They did this.
Were those
Very
real
inadequate
temperatures
but
or
that's
heat
all I
index?
Very
Were-
inadequate answer, but that's all I can tell you.
Well, I've heard that sometimes it's the heat index, not necessarily the outside temperature, that
Yeah.
was like 52.
Yeah, I experience when I go to India. It's a funny thing. The same heat that bothers me here, it doesn't bother me there. I don't know. I haven't been able to figure out why it has a different effect. I guess part of it's psychological because everybody else is with you in that, and you say, okay, bear with it. They're okay. I'm okay.
Does it have to do with humidity? I mean, is there humidity in India? May I think that's why. Mean if it's humid, then the same temperature bothers you more than if it's dry.
Yeah, it's mostly dry at this time, but misery comes when it is still hot and it starts raining. But the temperatures also drop at that time. So there are periods when it's very miserable because it's still hot and rains come. Rains are welcome. There's a lot of romantic poetry written in India for rains for this reason, because it relieves you, get it in a romantic mood.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the program. And Raj, thank you very much for a great presentation and information. And also thank you everybody who participated in the good discussion. So we expect to see you again next week, where we're going to be talking about Laos. So have a nice weekend and happy Father's Day, by the way. And we'll all see you next week. Thank you again, Raj.
Happy Father's
Thank you.
Day. Those who aren't fathers.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we'll see you next Sunday.
Raj, before you
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, at yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.